Hey everyone, welcome to Cyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. Today, Vern and I are continuing our discussion on Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi. For those of you who don't remember, this was a contentious movie, and Vern and I disagree about a lot of it. So I did want to assure you once again, our discussion sometimes got a little more heated than we normally do. But at no time did we ever resort to name calling. And at the end of the day, we're still friends. We never, ever even came across the idea that we weren't. But I wanted to assure you that the whole point of this show is still intact, that we agree to disagree. And when we do disagree, we do it in a respectful way. I hope that you'll enjoy this episode. And please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Okay, enjoy the show.
I wouldn't want to call it achto either.
Yeah, that sounds like a fungus.
Oh, and by the way, hate the green milk, embarrassing and gross. Love the poggles, the pongs, whatever.
I don't like the porgs.
The penguin guy, the porgs, yeah. Love the porgs. I love the porgs.
I didn't like the porgs. I didn't have a problem with
They're
the green
adorable.
milk. They're
adorable. He's sitting on a rock overlooking a cold ocean. It's clearly some kind of like Antarctic kind of environment, and there's penguins there. What's there to hate?
It's not that I hated them for being there or anything. It's this whole insufferably cute thing. I hated the scene where Chewie is about to eat what appears to be roast porg, and the porg is looking at him like really sad, and he like pushes it away. I would have looked directly at the porg and taken a big bite of the.
That would have been even funnier, actually. Yeah. That would have been even. I don't think anybody in the audience would have been. Oh man, Chewie's a big meanie. I don't think anybody would. I think that would have got a huge laugh out of the audience.
Yeah, personally, I would have loved that. So,
well,
and the porgs
I think it's really important, as insulting as it may be, as horrific as it may be, as much as us adult Star Wars fans do not want to hear this, it is made for kids. It always was made for kids.
Yes. But I never liked the porgs. They just always bothered me.
Okay, well, that's one more thing we disagree on then, because I love the porgs.
And I never really, I mean, I understand a few people don't like the green milk thing. I just never really cared. To me,
gross.
It's such a throwaway
It's so
thing.
Gross.
I almost don't register it. I mean, I feel like it's just, it's like the blue milk in A New Hope. It's just a milk that happens to be a different
color. The blue milk
was
pasteurized, homogenized, came from a refrigerator. It was served to him by his mom. It's on another planet. It may not even be milk. It's blue. We don't have any drinks that are blue unless it's Gatorade, but it looks alien. Like, that's different. But to have this old master sit down next to this gross cow and press on its fat belly and watch this ooze come out of its nipple, and then watch him drink it like a soda and have it come away from the bottle in his lip with a little trail of slime. No, I'm sorry. I don't know how you can not see that. It's gross. It's unnecessary. I think that is something that Ryan was playing for laughs, but then he missed the opportunity for the laughs with the porgs. Odd.
Yeah, I think that you're right. If he was playing it for laughs, I didn't think it was funny. I did think it was gross, but it didn't bother me as much as it bothered you. I just kind of like it was such a.
Well, I think it goes back to the difference in the perception of Luke. I think I don't mean to be self-centered about this, but I would be willing to bet that the vast majority of the Star Wars fandom is more on my side about Luke than on your side. I think everyone else Yeah, I think it's fair to say everyone else kind of saw Luke as incorruptible and saw Luke as a good guy and saw Luke as the embodiment of hope. And so, in a movie that is consistently, systematically trying to tear down everything we love about this character, they then put him in this very gross position to do this very gross thing. And so, it does have an impact. It's one thing if, I don't know, Poe did it, but for Luke to do it, it just, and for Luke to do it all by itself, that'd be one thing, but it's in a movie that consistently and systematically tears down everything we know and love about this character, which I think,
Uh,
again, I'm not trying to put thoughts in Ryan's head, but again, I feel like that's unnecessarily cruel. I think that's mean-spirited. I think that for a guy to take something that he knows all of his audience loves and piss on it consistently, there's no other logical recourse that I have in my mind. And to think that he really, really doesn't like the fandom, and he had this golden opportunity to take this thing they love and smack him in the face with it. And he
yeah,
did. And I'm not just talking about Luke, I'm talking about across the board. But even the green milk from the cow thing is an example of what I mean by that.
yeah. I just
But you
to
didn't
me, it
think
just
of Luke as a hero, so when he did this gross thing, it didn't affect you. But I
yeah.
think me and the rest of the audience, we thought of Luke as a hero, and so now you've taken his hope away. You've made him this crusty old man. You've made him disinterested in his father's lightsaber. You've made him hide from the galaxy while it burns. You've painted him as a person who's willing to take out his lightsaber and slay his own nephew. You've destroyed his ability to create a new Jedi Council, and now you're going to have him slurp on this gross warm crap from this sea lion that's washed up on the beach. I'm sorry. How many are you actually going to strip him down naked and have him jack off on camera? Because that might finish off any respect that anybody ever had for him. How many other gross ways can you have to tear down this beloved character? I just think that that's mean. And I think that there's many mean-spirited people that hate Star Wars that would love to do a fan film about that just for laughs, but to hand the actual canon Star Wars over to this guy for billions of dollars and then have him do it and laugh all the way to the bank while everyone else is like, hey, what did you do? I don't know. I
Well,
find that very enigmatic.
like I said, I don't know exactly why they gave it to Ryan. I'm guessing it's because they thought he was going to do something to surprise everyone.
Well, he did. He
Yeah,
definitely did
he
that.
definitely did. But I mean, I suspect that was the whole thing. I suspect that it was a response to the fact that everyone thought the Force Awakens was too predictable. So they gave it to a guy whose whole MO is to do things that are unpredictable.
Well, and I
Um,
got to say right off the bat, that is a horrible production idea because if you had a standalone movie like Solo, maybe go for it because
yeah,
Ryan Johnson, his whole I'm going to subvert your expectations things, that's a fine thing to build a career on. There's nothing in itself wrong with that. But that's also very experimental. It's like when Lucas made THX 1138. If you're
yeah,
a deep sci-fi fan, if you're a philosophy fan, if you're a Lucas fan, you're going to watch that movie. Everybody else never even seen it before because it's deeply experimental. Ryan Johnson is an experimental movie maker. Why in the hell would you want to bring on an experimental movie maker in the middle of a trilogy that represents the most expensive, hopefully the most profitable, well-known IP trilogy in history? Why would you bring him in right in the middle? That is a terrible idea. Consider Visions on Disney Plus. Visions
still
is an
haven't watched
anime
it, although I
series.
do want to.
Okay, well,
I do want to.
everybody else listening has seen it. And so in Visions, there's this spattering, this anthology of animated visionaries that think of Star Wars in their own way. And every single one of these Visions episodes is a completely different animation style and a completely different take on the Star Wars universe. Very few of them kind of feel with that lightsaber, Jedi, pew pew, spaceship kind of feel. Many of them are very personable, very kind of close to home. Some of them don't even leave like the area around the place where the character is living. They're very experimental and they stand on their own. But if you took and if you go, hey, we're giving you the license to make a 15-minute short that'll be on Disney Plus, that's one thing. But if you take that same dude and you go, we know you're not really a Star Wars fan and you have a completely weird way of making all your stories and we love it. So let's put you in the middle of the trilogy and get you without a plan, give you complete license to do whatever you want in the middle of the trilogy. And the first thing your guy does when you hire him is go, what was he doing before me? Yeah, that's all done. We're
Yeah.
done. We're not doing any of
Oh,
that. That is an awful production
I do
idea.
want to clarify something, and I should have said this right at the beginning, so I apologize to you and to anyone listening. But something I should say is that I do agree. I don't know that this was the best idea. I don't really know why Disney would do like. I'm
I'm
honest when
still
I
trying to
say
figure it out.
I'm honest when I say I think that Disney's way of thinking was if everyone thought that episode seven was too predictable, they would bring someone who doesn't do anything predictable. But I'm not saying that was necessarily a good idea. And I could say that before the movie was even released. Star Wars being predictable is what it is. It was never about, it's not a whodunit.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
you
That's
know,
true.
I am not saying
And I've never
that.
thought about that before. That's valid. I give you that. I've never considered that before, but that's also gross. That's gross because basically you've got a bunch of heartless executives that are basically having caviar after they've teed time at the golf course and they don't care about Star Wars. They don't know anything about Star Wars, but it was like, well, what did we throw at the fan last time? Was it purple? I don't know. Let's throw red this time. Like that's gross to me because like you're supposed to be carrying the torch of Star Wars. Do you have any love for this story or the characters? Do you have any plan? Because I don't, I think what you're saying is born from people who have no love for the fandom, no love for the story, no love for the mythology, and no plan for it, and no care to have a plan for it. So
Well,
they're just like, I don't know. What did we do? Black last time? Let's do white this time. Maybe. I don't know.
I do want to say, like, I hate saying anything bad about Disney because I've
I
always
know
loved
that's
Disney as
hard.
a company. But
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I don't think it was a good idea, and I'm on your side in that. I think that I think it really was exactly as you say, a whole bunch of corporate executives who don't know a thing about Star Wars, who don't care at all about Star Wars. They saw people said it was too predictable, and they got a guy who does things that are unpredictable without even considering the consequences of it.
Yeah.
And that's why they wound up with this. But
Yeah.
again, I want to say that hesitatingly because it doesn't change the fact that I enjoy this movie.
Sure.
I still have a lot of respect for Disney as a company. I just think that in this case, they made a mistake. And I'm not just saying it because the movie didn't do very well, but because I agree with what you're saying. The answer to people think that episode seven is too predictable is to make it a little less predictable, maybe, but not, completely upend everything. Um, One of the things that we had talked about before was, did Disney have a plan? And I don't know if they did. I don't know if J.J. Abrams had a plan, but I'd like to think if I was a fly on the wall when he pitched The Force Awakens to the Disney people, I'd like to think he did have a plan and that he was setting up what may be tropes, but were going to play out over the course of a trilogy the way we expected them to. And if people hadn't been saying it was so predictable, then we might have gotten a very different episode eight. But I think that a bunch of executives who didn't know what they were doing said, "Oh, fans say that it's predictable. Let's get someone who doesn't do predictable." So in a
Well, and
way, I agree
I
with
don't have
you.
a I don't and I hear that and I hear that and I thank you for meeting me at least at that point. But I just I don't have a better word for that than gross. It's gross. Like I'm sorry, this was Lucas's baby, and it was way more than Lucas's baby. It became sort of a collective property of mankind.
Well,
This is a
not for nothing.
global phenomenon. If you don't care and you're shrugging your shoulders and just be like, I don't know, whatever, do whatever you want, that's gross. That just tells me that you're a spoiled aristocrat with way too much money to spend, and you went ahead and bought something that people love, and you had no love for it. And the only reason why JJ was given the reins in the first movie is because he happened to be the it guy at that moment. Again, like I don't know, this is $1 billion, this is a $1 trillion movie, and we're gonna make $1 trillion on it. Who's the guy? I don't know. Who's the guy that's made the biggest movies lately? It's JJ. Well, get him. Not because he's a Star Wars fan, not because he's got the right vision, but because he's the big guy right now. And it's just these are heartless decisions made about something that people have a heart for.
Yeah, but
We are
don't.
here years later having a conversation about this and making it public because we have a heart for it. And it's gross when if you take a beloved dog that you have cared for and you fall into health problems and you've got to do something and you find somebody that takes ownership of it and they tell you that they're going to love it and they pay you for it and then they take it off and beat the shit out of it. That's gross. That's you're trampling on more than just an object. You're trampling on something that really means something to people.
But also, for what it's worth, the rumor I don't know, I've never met George Lucas, but according to what I've read, his initial plan when he pitched to Disney had Luke as a lonely hermit who had given up. That was George Lucas's idea.
Yeah,
They
but I bet the way he
abandoned that
went
whole
about
idea.
it was very different, though.
I'm sure it was different. No one ever comes up with the same idea. But the fact that
Hmm.
Luke had given up and was a hermit who helped no one, that was a Lucas thing long before it was a Disney thing. The fact that Disney didn't go with Lucas's ultimate idea doesn't change the fact that Lucas's idea included Luke as a hermit. This incorruptible character, as you said, when George Lucas created him, was corrupted in Lucas's own version. I would love to know what George Lucas's full idea was, but I don't know if he
I would
ever
too.
revealed it.
And if we could visit the parallel dimension where Lucas didn't sell Star Wars, we could actually find out. And I wonder, this is purely hypothetical and probably not worth talking about, but I wonder if you and I could see that movie and then come back and see The Last Jedi, if we would have similar opinions about which one was better,
Yeah,
which one
who
was
knows?
the quote unquote right way to go.
Well, there's so many, I mean, we can't even start to go into the
Oh
idea
yeah.
of what would happen if this had happened or
Well,
that had happened.
this may be a rabbit trail, but I'm telling you right now, mark my words, in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see it. You're going to see every single iteration of the story that you ever thought about, dreamed about, even version of the story you never even considered. You're going to see them all become available. You're going to see them all become commonplace because every single person that ever imagined how they wanted Star Wars to go is going to be able to make their own movie exactly the way they envisioned it. And when we have a selection of 23 different versions of The Last Jedi, it will be relatively easy to pick our favorite.
Maybe. I would like to see that, I guess. Sort of. I don't
That's
know.
coming.
Actually,
That's coming.
anyway, we have now been talking for, I don't know, like an hour, and we are at like 15 minutes into the movie.
Now we've covered a lot of what is going on in the movie, though. But yeah,
True,
so
true. Well, one thing
so
that I do want to say, because this is actually, I'm looking at, I'm following along the plot on Wikipedia just so that we can, remember what happens when. And one thing that I do think is very, kind of states what we've been talking about this whole time is if you look at the iterations of Kylo Ren's mask because in The Force Awakens, he's got this cool Darth Vader looking helmet, right? He does take it off, but that's about it. In The Last Jedi, he comes in with the mask and he like grovels with Snoke a bit, and then Snoke tells him, take that ridiculous thing off. And he takes off the mask, um, and he smashes it. I don't remember if he smashed it right then or if he smashed it a little later in the movie. But the point is, he smashes it, breaks it into little pieces, and we never see the mask again in The Last Jedi. And then the first thing we see, not the first, but like a little ways into The Rise of Skywalker, he puts the mask back together, which is kind of like JJ gave him the mask, Ryan Johnson broke the mask, and JJ bandaged the mask and put it back together so that he could have it.
yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually.
So I don't know. It was
I,
just something
I I
that
never considered the symbolism, but like, basically so the mass symbolism means a lot because it does tell the story of how things happened, how things were broken, how things were recreated. And it's not particularly secret. It's not even particularly invisible because it seems, based on commentary that I've heard over the last many years, is the unanimous understanding that JJ did a good job, but he also had the advantage of this maelstrom of frenzy and activity over Star Wars because everybody was just really super stoked about the fact that Disney had Star Wars now and that we had no idea where it was going to go, but it's just going to be great. So it's almost no way he could have failed. And we have all these criticisms now, but like the fact is, the first movie did really, really well. The
Hmm.
second movie broke everything the first movie did and made everybody wonder what the heck was going on. And then the third movie tried its best to repair and pick up the thread almost like Last Jedi never even happened. And then did a poorly executed wrap up of the trilogy. And that I'm not saying that as that's Vern's opinion. I'm saying that seems to be almost a unanimous understanding if you go out online and hear what everybody has to comment on it. And so the fact that Kylo's Mask follows that same course, I think is more than coincidence. I think it paints that picture and sort of demonstrates that this wasn't something that was supposed to be a secret, even though it was a behind the scenes thing, and even though it is arguably embarrassing if it's true. And
Hmm.
Disney sort of didn't have a plan, so they let this thing get broken and then had to come back and fix it right there on stage in front of the audience while they're watching. I've never thought about the progression of Kylo's mask, and I think that's actually a good connection.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's just
Did
maybe
you come up
it's
with that or did you read
yeah.
that?
No, I didn't read it. I was thinking about it
Oh,
because
okay. Yeah, no, I like that.
but then again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe it's just that JJ really has a hard on for masks.
I don't know.
I
I
have
don't
no
think so.
idea.
I don't know. I think you're onto something there. I
Maybe.
think JJ's not dumb. I personally think that he messed up a lot of things. I mean, I personally have a lot of criticisms about JJ. I blame him for simultaneously ruining both of the most successful sci-fi franchises of all time simultaneously. And I also believe that that's why you don't hear about JJ anymore. I believe that JJ's time in the spotlight is over, and that the
I'm not
talk
gonna.
the talk in public about JJ being the next Steven Spielberg was unfortunately greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, I'm not going to say one way or the other, but you're right that JJ does seem to have disappeared
But
largely. Um,
but that being said, he's no dummy. He's a
yeah.
good storyteller, and so for him to do that mass thing, symbolically representing what he was trying to repair from what was broken, I think that's a pretty clever observation.
Yeah. But I mean, a completely separate topic, but I wouldn't mind talking to you about the Star Trek movies because I actually enjoyed them.
You
No, I'm
mean the
not
new
saying
ones, the
the new ones,
JJ
the
movies?
J.J. Abrams
Yeah.
movies.
Well,
I liked them.
I wish that Star Wars had something that Star Trek has, and that is, I kind of wish there was some cosmic event before The Force Awakens that sort of let everybody think, you know what, all this stuff is happening, and we're going to go ahead and tell the story. But it's not in the prime timeline. It's something that changed. It's something that happened in a bubble. And there's always a possibility that canon in universe, we could go back to that moment when that cosmic thing happened and we could tell an entirely different story and it would both exist. And that might have been hard to swallow in 2009, but it's easy to swallow now thanks to the MCU
Well,
because we now have
yeah.
this public understanding that there is a multiverse, whether it's true or not. We have this public understanding of what the multiverse is and that all these simultaneous things can happen at once. So I particularly love the idea that the entire Disney trilogy can be retconned without destroying the entire Disney trilogy, as long as you've got some sort of cosmic phenomenon that says, yeah, all that stuff happened, but that was in a different, shittier parallel universe. Now we're going to explore what happened in this parallel universe
Well,
because it happened very differently.
technically, you don't need a cosmic phenomenon. You
Well,
all you
I'm
have to do is if you don't like the Disney, not that I'm saying to do this, but for anyone who doesn't like the Disney Star Wars movies and loves the Legends books, then read the Legends books and
yeah.
ignore the Star Wars movies.
Well, you're
And
going to see the Legends books turned into movies by independent fans. I
I
guarantee in the
suspect
next 5 years.
I wouldn't be well. I'm not going to. This is mere conjecture. I'm not in the know, but I would not be surprised at all if they started adapting those books, but putting them into a perspective of the Disney characters. Like they're talking about making a movie of Rey training a bunch of Jedi Knights. I would not be surprised at all if they took a whole bunch of stories from the Legends where Luke was training Jedi, but rather than break up the trilogy that they made, they'll just continue it. But instead of Luke, they're going to plug in Rey instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
Kyle
that
Katarn.
would be yet another mistake. I'm just going to go ahead and call that
I
out
have
right
no
here, right
idea
now.
because
That
if
would
people
if
like
they
the
I can see them doing that, but I think it would be a huge mistake because once again, you're dragging through the mud something that all your fans already love. And you're taking this and you're making this familiar, like, hey, you guys asked for it, here you go. And then everybody sits down and like, this is not at all what I asked for. You didn't even get the main character right. I think that's a really good way to further alienate your audience. And I don't know how much of Disney's audience is left to alienate. I'm
I
getting some
really
very piss poor sentiment from Star Wars fans
I
online
don't
about
think
the frenzy of interest is
well
fading.
I personally think that Disney is stuck between a rock and a hard place there because
Yes,
they are
yes,
not
I do
going
too.
to it would not be in their best interest to say our trilogy didn't happen and now we're going to do it over again or our
Absolutely
trilogy,
not.
they're not going to do that.
They have to
So
admit
if
they're
they're going to
wrong, which is something they seem incapable of doing. So I get it.
I don't know that that would make good sense to them either, because, for them to admit they're wrong, then
But
they would also have to say these movies no longer happened and we're going to have to do them over again.
But
And I
Josh,
don't,
therein is the thread of this part of the conversation. We were talking about Star Trek, and I was saying you like the JJ movies. Okay, well, I wish Star Wars had something that Star Trek had, and that is in the beginning of the first JJ Star Trek movie, a
yeah,
portal in time opens up, and because of that, everything that happens after that is in a skewed timeline, which means that all the adventures of Kirk and Spock and the destruction of Vulcan and all that stuff, that none of that ever happened in the prime timeline. This
right.
is another timeline. And
Yeah,
so, and we're not talking about Star Trek, but I'm saying it would
yeah,
be
yeah.
cool if Star Wars had that because then you wouldn't have to retcon anything.
It is entirely,
Ray and the gang, they all exist in one version. And it doesn't mean that we're going to retcon all that. We're going to make it this other thing. It's just that, hey, the multiverse, there's all these
yeah,
things that happen.
it is
So
still
in
possible.
that sense, everything that happened in the Legends books, they also actually happened and
Yeah.
they're actually canon. They're just in a parallel universe from
Well, that's what I was saying. But
The Disney Star Wars.
but also Disney could do that in the future. They could very
They
easily make
could.
a movie that takes place between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, where a portal opens and we get a different parallel universe.
I
Like,
love the idea, however unrealistic it may be, of Star Wars being now, don't exaggerate what I'm saying, but some form of public domain where it's almost like the SCP of fiction, where it's like everybody's combined ideas just sort of get into this thing and they all sorts of jive together. I love that. As soon as you introduce the multiverse, you can have every single nerd on Earth make their own Star Wars trilogy, and they're all canon because they all happen in some parallel universe in the Star Wars galaxy.
well,
And then if you had the selection of 1,372 Star Wars movies, you could pick your favorite five and they would be awesome because with all the selections, your favorite to you would be the absolute best of them all. And that could very well kickstart a new level of interest in Star Wars.
but that's not going to happen for.
Of course not in the terminology that I just used, but I have a feeling AI and technology is about to change all the terminologies. And I think that maybe 20 years from now, looking back, many of the things that we feel like our hands are tied by legally, many of the things that we feel like Hollywood would never allow to happen, they're all going to pass. They're all going to pass, and us old men are going to be shaking our canes at the young folks that are doing this new thing. But the new thing is going to be the new thing, and I think maybe some of those paradigms will shift.
Uh,
I guess it really depends on how much money Disney loses on Star Wars,
it is
and
possible,
they've
but
already
don't
lost
forget.
a colossal amount of money.
But don't forget, Disney is not going to let people start writing Star Wars stories unofficially. It's not going to happen
Well,
as
it's
long
already
as,
happening. What are you talking about? It's already happening. It's all over YouTube.
yeah, people
There's
do that all
tons
the
of
time,
fan
but
fiction.
because they don't make any money. But as soon as they start making money off of it, Disney will step in
No, I'm
with
not
their,
suggesting that anybody makes money. I'm suggesting that they will write movies and produce movies. But the difference is movies that used to cost 20 million, then they costed 120 million, and now they cost 420 million. They're going to be reduced to the cost of zero because new technology is going to do what Lucas predicted in the mid 90s, which is allow every Joe Schmo in the world to be able to produce a convincing feature length movie out of their garage. And so I don't think any of these people are going to want money. I think they're all going to want to create fan fiction because they love the fiction. And that is
yeah,
the element that's missing from Disney is that they don't seem to have anybody there that loves the fiction. They just love the potential profits from the fiction.
yeah. Well. I guess we'll have to see because
Well,
that's
I
like
think therein, that core of what I just said, therein is the revolution that's coming. It's maybe you can call it an AI revolution or whatever, but it's what it really is a revolution of the few people that have all the money making all the entertainment decisions, but caring nothing about the franchises that they're projecting or the fandoms that they're projecting to. We're going to see all of that disseminate into the public, and you're going to see people that truly have a heart and a love for these stories and these mythologies and these characters begin to be the authors and finishers of their stories. And I think that the results are going to be so awesome and so entertaining and so universally acceptable that there's no way you're going to be able to stop it. I mean, we'll create a whole nother internet just to be able to house those things to keep them away from all the fat cats that are trying to pluck them out. There's no way to stop the people when the people unite in their thinking. We'll see. I'm
yeah.
being
I
very
mean,
predictive
I
right
would
now.
like to be able to envision that, but I really don't know what it's going to look like at all.
It's
So
it's almost impossible to imagine what it's going to
yeah.
look like. It's going to change so radically from what we now understand. So anyway, that's all very predictive and sociological. So we
Yeah,
can
we
move
need to get
beyond that.
back to the movie because we it's been like 20 minutes since I said we
Well,
were 15 minutes into the
let's
movie and we're still
okay.
15 minutes into the
Let's
movie.
stop for 10 seconds and admit to ourselves that we do not have to comment on every single scene in the movie from beginning to end
No,
in
we
order
don't.
to complete this conversation.
We're
And
definitely not going to.
maybe we broke the mold with this one because I mean, frankly, I hate is such a strong word. I don't like to use it, but I'm going to go ahead and use it just to get the idea across. I hate this movie so much that I feel like if all the movies we've commented on, this is the one that breaks our normal paradigm of commenting on every single scene from beginning to end. That seems appropriate. We've poured a lot of ideas out about this movie without necessarily commenting on every single scene. But
Yeah.
that being said, if you want to move on to what's next, let's move on to what's next.
Well, it's not that I want to. It's just that I want to make sure that we're. I guess
Being thorough.
I was worried that we were skipping important things. So the next scene that I really wanted, something that I really wanted to talk about. We can skip over several scenes here, but this is when we do get introduced to Vice Admiral Holdo. Laura Dern, who I know you loved in Jurassic Park. So we meet her, and I think that they were trying to establish her as kind of rude because she doesn't like they established very quickly she doesn't like Poe very much. She's a strategist, and I guess she feels like he's too hot-headed, and she's right. That's kind of the point of his character in this movie. That's his character arc that we mentioned before, is he goes from being hot-headed to understanding there's a chain of command for a reason, and being a hotshot pilot isn't enough. Um, but we meet her, and was there something that you wanted? Because it sounded like you wanted to talk about how much you hated her before.
No, I don't like to talk about things I hate. I'm just saying that I mean maybe it's a contentious statement, but I think it's safe to say that the fans as a whole universally hate Admiral Holdo more than they hate Jar Jar, more than they hate young Anakin, and more than they hate Rose Tico.
Really? I
Now,
actually did not know.
why is a whole nother conversation. I mean, we can guess. I may have my own opinion and vice versa, but it seems like people rail on Rose and they rail on young Anakin and they rail on Jar Jar, but I hardly ever hear anybody railing on Admiral Hodo because I feel like after the movie came out, there was just this long reckoning of hearing about how everybody hates this character and then silence, which for Star Wars is uncanny because in my opinion, it seems to indicate that people hate her so much they don't even want to talk about her anymore. You'll hear people hating on Jar Jar regularly, but at least they care about him enough to continue to talk about how much they hate him. But nobody seems to beat on Holdo anymore.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know that everyone hated Holdo. I have no problem with her.
Really? Okay.
I mean, she's not a likable person. I don't think
She's not
she's
a
supposed
likable
to be.
person.
She's not
She
supposed to be. She's
comes on board to a bunch of legacy characters that we all know and love, and she outshines all of them. And she's smug, and she takes control of the situation without any background to tell us why she deserves to take control of the situation. She continuously belittles some of the main characters, Poe especially.
Mhm.
I think there's probably a little bit of a gut reaction when you from the real people in the real world when you have a character with purple hair come out and start telling everybody else how things should be and taking control of everything. And then ultimately she's the one that does the lightspeed crash, which
We'll get to
breaks
that.
Star Wars lore in so many ways that
I don't I
it's
don't
worth
think so.
talking about.
Yeah, we do need to talk about that. I actually loved that, but that's a precursor. We'll get there. We got a
Okay.
lot to talk about before we get there. Um, I mean, I think that she was intentionally made to be dislikable, because of
Okay.
exactly what you said, and part of it is the way she treats Poe, because we like Poe at this point. But I think that was the whole point. We've already established he has a character arc, and Holdo is a big part of what that arc surrounds. This whole chain of command. She's abrasive. She doesn't want to tell him the plan because it's a need to know basis. And frankly, he doesn't need to know. He's not the leader. And that's the point that he needs to learn. And he does learn it by the end, but at this point in the movie, he hasn't learned it. So I think that she has a purpose. I don't really hate her. I mean, as a character, I don't like her as a person, the character, not Laura Dern, um, because we're not supposed to. And I don't, I think that's exactly how they intended it.
Well, I have a public service message. If you make a dislikable character, don't be too shocked when everyone dislikes her.
Oh, no, no, I know. And I don't
Everyone
think that.
dislikes her. And I guess if you're going to make a dislikable character that happens to be a bad guy, then that makes a lot of sense. Because when the
Yeah.
bad guy is defeated, everybody cheers. But when you're making a dislikable character that not only are you making a good guy, but you're making it in charge of all the good guys, and then you're going to give her a Jesus moment where she gets to sacrifice herself to save everybody else, nobody is going to cheer because she was an unlikable character to begin with.
Well,
So
I'm not saying.
again, it's a study in bad storytelling is all.
Well, possibly, but I think that she has a purpose. What I'm saying is I don't like her as a person. Like she's dislikable
Okay.
because of the way she treats everyone.
Well, let me
But
hear it. I would love to hear your purpose for Holdo being a dislikable person and then being given a Jesus moment. How does that make sense? How does that work? What am I missing?
because ultimately it wasn't about being nice. She was following a chain of command. She had a plan that she didn't feel Poe needed to know, and her plan was successful, or it would have been if it weren't for the what's his name um the guy who pretend the guy who's the code breaker, but he's not really the code breaker.
Oh,
Um,
Del Toro's character.
yeah,
Yeah.
Del Toro's character. He's the one who leaks the plan, who tells the First Order that they were abandoning the ships so that so the plan would have fallen through. But if it hadn't been for him, and he only knew because of Poe sending out Finn and um, what's her name, Rose, they're the ones who met him. So like one thing led to another, but the point is that's how her plan got foiled, or would have if she didn't have her Jesus moment. The point is that she was always a good guy. She always had a plan. It wasn't about whether she's a nice person or not. She had a plan that would have been successful. And Poe,
Well, okay,
his
wait. I'm
his
going to stop you
story.
there. I want to stop you there because we're not talking about a nice person. Leia is not a nice person, but she is definitely likable. There's a
Yeah.
difference. You can be a hard ass and still be a likable character, especially from an audience that is watching a wartime story. There's a lot of hard asses in a wartime story that's like, I'm not really sure I want this person over for a barbecue, but I like him. I like her. I think that she is the person that should be in charge.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that it's necessarily the right way to do it. Maybe maybe Ryan Johnson made a mistake in making her dislikable, but that's neither here nor there. I think she still has a purpose, likable or not. Her purpose is to teach Poe that chain of command exists for a reason. If he hadn't gone off with Finn and Rose and had this half-assed plan, then then her plan would have been successful. Her Jesus moment was basically to say to the audience, yeah, you didn't like her, but guess what? She was on your side. It's a statement that we are going to find out over and over again in any rebellion, including when we talk about Andor. I mean, if we ever talk about Andor, but anyone who wants to talk about the show Andor, uh, rebels are not good people in that they're criminals. They have to be. You can't have a rebellion without breaking laws. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
I kind of lost the
that
topic there, but
that is a philosophical question that I have extreme disagreement with, and I think it might actually broach off the rails too much to be part of the Last Jedi. I think the overarching question of whether or not good exists and evil exists, and whether breaking evil's rules to destroy evil and restore good, I think we might find that the whole audience is actually split right down the middle on that, and it comes down to not just a Star Wars fandom thing, but like a general religious slash spiritual slash moral slash philosophical thing.
well,
So
I'm not.
I'm going to go ahead and just disagree with you strongly that the rebels are the bad guys because they're rule
Oh no, I'm
breakers.
not saying that. I'm not saying they're the bad guys at all. They're definitely
Okay.
not. I maybe I misspoke, and I apologize if I sounded like I was saying they're the bad guys. They're not the bad guys, but they are criminals. They have to
Well,
be
from the Empire's point
from
of
the
view,
Empire's point of
because
view.
the
Yeah,
Empire is pure evil.
yes, but the Empire was the one during the Galactic Civil War, the first one. The Empire was the one. They were the government. So the rebels were breaking laws left and right. They were criminals. You
Yeah,
can't have
but that doesn't make them bad people,
that
though.
doesn't make
That
them
doesn't
bad
make them
people.
bad people.
No, I'm not saying that makes
Han
them.
Solo, probably not the best kind of neighbor, but definitely a likable guy.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, Luke
I'm not saying
Skywalker,
they're.
just a good guy all around. Like the Luke Skywalker would be your best friend. He would be your
Yeah,
mentor. You know, he would be your pastor. He's just a generally good guy.
yeah. But look at Rogue
That
One.
one's easy.
Yeah, but look at Rogue One. There's a perfect example. There's several perfect examples in that. But if you want the easiest one, look at the introduction to Cassian Andor in Rogue One. This is a perfect example of a rebel. He is doing something for the greater good, even though he has to do stuff that's semi awful. In his very first scene, he meets this guy who's like got some information for him, and the guy's freaking out. And Cassian is like, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." And then he shoots him in the back because he's a liability. Because he isn't a nice guy, but he is doing something for the greater good. Look at Lucen uh, Stellan Skarsgård's character in Andor and his speech when one of the best written speeches of all time, written in a Star Wars show, which was season one of Andor, where he talks about what he sacrifices.
Yeah, I've heard people gushing over that.
Do you have you seen it?
I do not agree that it is the best written speech of all time, but
I
I've heard
love that
people.
speech.
I know that's the pretty much universal opinion of the internet. Yes.
But I mean, what he's saying sums it up perfectly. This is what the rebellion is. He sacrifices his decency for a sunset he knows he will never see. In other words, he's doing things that he acknowledges are awful, but he's
Yeah.
doing it for the greater good.
Okay. Okay. But
Yes,
I mean,
they are
just
good
to stay
guys.
on subject, he is a good guy.
Yes.
He is a likable character.
Oh, yeah, I'm not, again, I'm not trying to defend Holdo. I'm saying I'm trying to say that I was never saying the rebels are not the good guys. They are definitely the good guys, but that doesn't mean they're doing things that they can just wipe their hand and say, we did all good things and we never
No,
broke the
no, of
law.
course not. No, of
Of
course
course
not.
they broke the law.
Nobody would make that argument. Neither I nor you are making that argument. We're just talking about whether or not it's a good idea to make the good guys likable characters. And
I
Holdo is an unlikable character.
I agree.
That's the length and breadth of this part of the conversation.
I agree. And maybe I was being too wordy because we did kind of get off the topic. But my point was that whether she was a nice person or not, whether she was a likable person or not, she was a good guy. Um,
Well,
she
because
did.
she was on the same ship with the other good guys. I figured that out. you know.
Yeah, well, also that justifies her Jesus moment. She sacrificed her life for all of these rebels, despite the fact that we don't like her. And you're not necessarily supposed to say, "Oh, well, that absolves her of all of her sins. All of a sudden, I love her now." No, you don't have to like her. She was mean to Poe. You don't have to forgive her for that. But she was a rebel. She was a good guy, and she was the definition of what rebels do. She sacrificed her life to save the rest of the rebels.
Fair point.
And when we get to that part of the movie, we'll discuss the actual act of jumping the light speed and destroying.
I
I
think
loved it, but
from a from a storytelling point of view, I feel like it was cheap to take a legacy character like Leia and just be like, here's this new person you never met before, but she has my personal confidence. That it's not that that's not doesn't work. It's not that that doesn't happen. It's not that that's unrealistic. It's just it's a cheap move to try to bring somebody that we've never met before up to the level of somebody that we've been with for 30 years.
so I do
And
wonder.
that's exactly what happens because Holdo stands on the bridge and basically commands the same kind of respect and the same kind of, command of the situation that Leia should have been. Leia, in Holdo's shoes, could have done the same job that Holdo did. But instead, they bring on a new actor that we don't know, we have no backstory for, no preparation for. And then Leia stands next to her and goes, "See this gun, this person right here? She's my girl. So trust her." And then she steps off the stage, and
Yeah,
and this person better be a badass. She better know kung fu. She better have a lightsaber. She better at least be somebody funny or likable or somebody that engenders some trust in us. Because we'll look at Leia and we'll go, "Oh, okay, I
yeah,
guess."
but
And then we'll look at Holdo, and if Holdo starts pissing us off, then you realize, well, that was just a cheap passing of the torch.
well, the thing that I was wondering, and other people might know this better than I do, but something that I thought of later on um, was the fact that Carrie Fisher died not long after the movie came out. Before the release of The Rise of Skywalker, they used archival footage of her
Hmm.
but I think that she had shot a lot of footage for the right. She had shot footage already for The Rise of Skywalker, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know if she had finished shooting everything for The Last Jedi. And my question is, I don't know if she was in poor health or anything because
Leia, or I'm sorry,
Carrie
Carrie.
Fisher.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure she was. Yes,
And that
yes,
might have been a necessity to,
yes. I
maybe
I
it was,
sympathize. I
yeah.
sympathize. That may be true, but again, I think repeatedly I keep coming back to the same point. We're talking about storytelling. And
Yeah.
in a storytelling sense, okay, you're having behind the scenes difficulties. Totally understand. We all love Carrie. Don't want to see her have to push herself harder than she needs to, but you need to tell this story. And if you don't, then we're going to wrinkle our nose about the things that you did wrong because we're not stupid and we can see straight through it. And we're not going to like this unlikable character if you don't give us a reason to like this unlikable character.
Yeah,
So this
well,
is, again, just a storytelling 101 thing.
I'm not defending the character. Like I didn't like her as a person. I've said that before.
Okay, okay.
But but
That's my whole point.
yeah, but I like like who the character is. I just don't like her as a person. I think that she has a purpose, which is to further Poe's story.
Oh, she
She's
definitely has a
there.
purpose. There's no
Yeah.
argument there.
Okay, we're all out of time. I want to thank you all for listening. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we'll be back to continue our discussion on Star Wars The Last Jedi next week. Thanks, and as always, please remember, make tomorrow better than yesterday.